Hello everyone, it is I, Ned, freelance cheesemonger at large, here today with something I like to call extreme cheesing. This is where you find some really extreme cheeses and eat them. It's quite simple really, it's a fascinating pastime. Now the thing that you want to know about extreme cheese is that a cheese can be born extreme, it can become extreme, or it can have extremity thrust upon it. And in this little segment we'll be exploring all those different scenarios of extreme cheese. The other thing about extreme cheese is that you need a booze of adequate authority to go with it. Now, sadly, I've run out of my mother-in-law's aged meths. That's actually a thing. So what I've got instead is a rather marvellous barley wine. Hi, Chris. I have a friend called Chris Hall who's involved in the making of this barley wine. And when you say barley wine, Chris appears. It's a bit like a benevolent craft beer version of the Candyman. Anyway, that aside, this is a barley wine. It's made by Howling Hops. Now, barley wines are pretty intense anyway. Also, this one is 10%, so it's going to be quite hefty. Also, this one is aged in whiskey casks, but not any old whiskey casks, American whiskey and Japanese whiskey casks. So that is, if you like, a form of extreme beering. Isn't this exciting? Without further ado, I will eat some cheese. The first one we have here is a cheese that is very much born extreme. It's the only cheese I've ever heard of that was consciously designed. So it's made by a lovely chap called Marcus Ferguson. Marcus went to live in Somerset to make cheese. Wasn't going to go up against cheddar, that would be daft. So he decided to invent an entirely novel style of cheese. It's a mixture of a washed rind, see the pink sticky rind of a washed rind, and a blue. You can't see the blue because the paste is so creamy and dense that the blue holes are sort of collapsed in, but I can tell you, and I can tell from the aroma, that this has had some blue mould added to it. Now, who would think of doing that, mixing a wash rind and a blue? It's called Renegade Monk, which in part alludes to its mentalness. Here we go, I'm going to eat some cheese. A word about eating cheese. What you want to do, have a look at your cheese. There's a lot you can tell about cheese by looking at it. I can tell this is a wash rind. It has a pink, sticky wash rind. It's got a nice uniform texture of paste there. Speaks of good cheese making. The next thing you want to do is to smell your cheese. Eminently barnyardy, as I would expect from a wash rind. You can get a bit of that piquant blue. We're doing this because a huge amount of our experience of flavour is from aroma. So then you want to eat it. And while you're eating it, think about the narrative structure of flavour. The cheese should be telling you a story. It should have a beginning, a middle, and a finish. Here we go, extreme cheesing number one. Well. Ooh. Well, I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me. So, gosh, that's marvellous. So actually, having had Renegade Monk before, I would say that's quite a restrained example of it. You didn't see me, normally there's this cartoon thing, steam would come out of my ears, my head would go up and down like this, but I was quite restrained for a Renegade Monk. Very creamy, like I said. Lots of that kind of barnyardy, farmy note, bit of smokiness, and some of that piquant blueness, and that sensation just in the back of my nose, that slightly ammoniac kind of sensation that in a very ripe Renegade Monk is a bit like being dumped by a big wave. Then, of course, the barley wine came along, this lovely thanks whoever you were, with raisins and sweetness. It's like fruitcake, so this is like kind of savoury, cheesy fruitcake experience. Not really that extreme at all, although immensely exciting. This is a cheese that has become extreme. It's called Innislog. It's a goat's cheese from Staffordshire. Now, the reason this has become extreme is a little bit sad, and it's because Joe Bennett, who used to make it, decided to stop making cheese, actually as a result of all the difficulties of the lockdown and COVID, which is a massive shame because Joe was an amazing cheesemaker, and I hope he's gone on to exciting pastures and you. Good luck, Joe. The happy end is that he sold his goats to Martin Gott, and Martin is now making a cheese called Holbrook out of Joe's goats, or their milk rather. And that's named after Mary Holbrook, the late great godmother of British goat's cheese. So there's some nice continuity going on here. There's a bit of sadness, a bit of rebirth, a bit of happiness. The point is, this is the last ever batch of Innislog in the world. So there's a little bit of poignancy to eating it. And also it's really developed. You can see how this once rather plump, soft, white, fluffy goat's cheese has shrunken in on itself, narrowed in, got more gnarly, more kind of, the wrinkles have got harder, darker. You know there's going to be something stronger going on there. You see this breakdown where the rind's been acting on the cheese as dark, as kind of dark green colour, and the normal pale white of the paste of a goat's cheese has turned into something like old ivory, like an old piano. So that was the looking phase. Now the smelling, it's quite goaty. It's something mossy, it's like lichen, something like going to a dank cave somewhere. I'm tremendously excited about this. It's got a sort of soapy looking texture that you find in a mature goat's cheese. Look how hard it is. I'm really having to put some effort into cutting this piece of cheese. Notice I'm cutting myself a slightly smaller piece here. I'm a little bit shy of this one. Ooh. It's quite dry. Gosh, pepper. So, the chap in the shop was Neil's Yard Dairy. Hi Tav, when I went to get this from a nice man called Tav, and he said it's gamey, and he's quite right. It's gamey. It's like a bit of game that's been hung somewhere, you know, quite warm for quite a while. There's a lot of pepper. When goat's cheeses age, they get peppery, spicy. I've actually got some heat in my mouth. The texture, because it's lost so much moisture, it's really mouth coating, so I can really still taste it. And the barley wine there just couldn't even touch that. You know, there's still that really intense peppery goat's cheesy flavour in my mouth. Goat's cheesy, words are my tools. Right, so that was quite something. Oh, still very peppery. Just going to have another sip of this. This is all going to get more florid as I drink more barley wine. Now this cheese has had extremity thrust upon it. It's actually a piece of an absolutely excellent Scottish blue. I'm not going to tell you whose cheese it is because I don't think they would want you to have your first impression of their cheese as this. What this is a little piece that got forgotten in my cheese drawer and has been in there for more than 3 months. And as you can see, the bluing has spread so that it's not so much veins of blue anymore. It's just basically blue. It was quite hefty when I tried it in its optimal ripe phase. So this is going to be quite something. I'm imagining something like Cabrales, which is a Spanish, I believe it's goat's cheese, goat or sheep, very blue, very intense. Oh yes, you can barely cut it, it just crumbles. I'm actually tremendously excited about this. I've been waiting months to try this. That's a strange thing to do, isn't it? Well, all I can smell is Renegade Monk there. Oh, well, it's nice. It smells of stone again. It smells of the Atlantic. You know, there's something kind of the sea, something about iodine in there. I might be giving you a clue about where it's from. Well, funnily enough, I think that went through extremity and with old age has mellowed and accrued wisdom. It's incredibly sweet. It tastes like kulfi, like Indian pistachio fudge. It's still got some moisture in it and lovely sweetness. And you can't really taste blue. Really fascinating. I want to see what the booze does to it. These are all like having sweets, isn't it? Funny. It's just like a sort of raisiny, fruity Middle Eastern sweet course of some sort. There is actually a lot of spice ramping up. If I carry on talking, I'll probably start wobbling a bit. My voice will wobble because that really is quite spicy. Ooh. Now, the final thing in our extreme cheesing session is something that's probably illegal in Britain, and it's called Fromage 4. And this is a thing that French cheesemongers, or Fromage, do, with all their odd bits and bobs. So say you had some bits and pieces like this lying around, or some bits of old hard cheese that were just past their best, you would trim the worst of the gnarliness off them, grind them up or mix them up in a mixer with some booze. I've used white wine and perhaps a little spice. I used a little bit of cayenne. I really don't know why, because it's spicy enough. And I used some white pepper, but you basically want to turn it into a sort of paste. And then for the really bold, you could leave that in a jar outside the fridge, which I did for a few weeks until my wife started to complain vociferously, so then it went into the fridge. But this has been around for months and months. It's called Fromage 4. In France, people have it for breakfast, which is a pretty grunty thing to do, and they would always have a sip of coffee before they have it, so that the cheese doesn't actually burn the skin of their mouth. So this is a cheese that needs prophylactic measures to eat. So we'll start with the barley wine this time. I haven't had any for more than a month, so I don't know what it's going to be like now. It's fantastic. Buy this. Well, any lingering traces of the cold that I was struggling with have just been completely banished. My nose's sinuses are marvellously clear now. It again has a very sweet taste, but more the sweetness of Tippex thinner or something like that. You know, I don't have to be polite about this one because I made it. You know, it's very intense, doesn't really taste of much, just heat, sweetness and Tippex thinner. I think I'm going to have some more barley wine. That was extreme cheesing. Thank you very much.